That brings me on to the next part of the program, which is to talk a little bit about the IGLTA Foundation Building Bridges Fellowship Program, which provides funding for selected LGBTQ+ small business leaders, young professionals, and students to attend the IGLTA Annual Global Convention for mentorship, education, and networking with our global community of thought leaders. We've got two students with us here today from Georgia State University, Alex Algara and Rikia Hepburn. But unfortunately, due to border crossings, we were only able to have one of the three fellowship recipients present with us in person. I'd like to give you the opportunity to hear from her. So please welcome to the stage Small Business Fellowship recipient Donia Z. Piggott of Pink Coconuts. Donia, where are you?
Good morning, and thank you so much to the LGTA for having me and for this award, especially coming from Barbados, a very tiny island that is not traditionally known for LGBT travel. So I don't know if the foundation remembers, but 5 years ago, if you dig deep down in your messages, a young activist would have asked for some support for the Pink Coconuts project at that time. And it was a project of Be Glad, the NGO that I ran. And I was politely told, well, we only support businesses. So 5 years later, I guess I understood the assignment. So thank you so much for the support. So my journey started out in advocacy. I ran a LGBT organization for over 8 years, and I quickly recognized the power of business. So in my 8 years of running an LGBT organization, I never got the support that I expected until I started to use the business case for inclusion. And so we started with seminars entitled Inclusive Travel in the Caribbean, and it was sponsored by the Canadian government, Virgin Holidays, and the Royal Commonwealth Society, and we were able to do that for 2 years. And we had various hotel partners involved, from Hilton to Marriott and so on. But then I quickly recognized that if we're going to use the business case for inclusion, then we need to have business. So there started Pink Coconuts. The Pink Coconuts project then registered as a company in Barbados and here in the United States. So apart from the seminars, what we did was we recognized that business could be used strategically as a tool for change. And I know oftentimes when we think of the Caribbean or sub-Saharan Africa and so on, we think that these places are not ready yet for travel, and they need to be ready for us to really bring people there. But Pink Coconuts, by definition, the coined definition that is Pink Coconuts is finding LGBT-friendly companies within these tropical destinations. And so that's the definition of a pink coconut. And we have pink coconuts here, like Wild Rainbow Safaris in Tanzania, Round Hill in Jamaica, and the Rust in Times in Nigeria. And so we're on a mission to find these pink coconuts all across the developing world. So how do we do that? And very early on, I recognized that homophobia is very rooted and closely linked to economic inequality, and a problem that is rooted in economics can only be solved by economics. So Pink Coconuts, like out in Colombia, aims to create employment opportunities and entrepreneurship opportunities for local LGBT communities as well as LGBT-friendly businesses so that we can move the needle, so that we can create social change. And a very early example of that was during COVID, when the Caribbean was devastated, because obviously our economies depend highly on tourism. And my Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, She was one of the first to really push this remote work stamp that we see a lot of the Caribbean islands and a lot of countries trying to get into. And so in the Constitution in Barbados, a family is deemed as, a man and a woman. And as she was pushing this remote work stamp, we emailed her and we said, well, if you're pushing this remote work stamp, the first people that can actually come here are queer people. And so it would make sense for the definition of a family to change. And within 2 weeks, it did. And I have been an activist. And I've been an advocate, talking about human rights and anti-discrimination legislation and all of these different, angles towards creating social change. And within just about 2 years, using this business case, the needle has changed. So then I began to think, what if we were able to use this in, many different ways, in ways that will, one, create more entrepreneurs within the developing world. One, it will be able to empower and encourage local communities, but it will also be able to give us as advocates leverage to change laws in that way. So it's really a business, but it's also a very strategic move. And I'll tell you a story because a lot of the homophobia that we see in the Caribbean or that we perceive is really, a large part of it is perception as well. Because I know many of you might have gone to various places in the developing world and you might not have had a problem, or you did. But a lot of it is perception. And I remember as I was beginning Pink Coconuts and we got a scholarship to study social entrepreneurship in Colorado. And I was very gung-ho about it. And at that time, I was kind of boycotting the United States because I felt it was like, at this point in time, we were seeing a lot of things in the news, and it was the most racist place on earth. And I accepted this scholarship to go to Colorado, but I thought Colorado was in Canada the entire time. and so thinking Colorado was in Canada, I accepted, and then about 2 weeks before, it was revealed to me that it was the United States, and I had already accepted at that point, and I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be a trip. And Colorado changed my life. It completely changed my life. I was very scarred from the harsh life as an advocate, and I became a recluse and became depressed. And I healed in the mountains of Boulder, Colorado. And had I known it was the United States, so it was about perception. It was entirely about perception, and I had such a brilliant time. And I remember going to the library and seeing this sign on the door saying, we accept people regardless of their sexual orientation, their race. And I know people see that quite often, but me coming from a small island in Barbados, I felt so welcomed. And it was just a sign. And I felt so welcomed. And so I took a lot of what I've learned in Colorado, and I'm trying to do that in my small community in Barbados, and I think it's something that we can do all across the region. So finally, clearly travel changes lives, and you all are advocates in your own right, being bold and taking the move to advocate for LGBT people, especially sometimes in places where you don't have much support, and providing an atmosphere not only for travelers, but for employees. Because by doing what you do and you bring travelers to hotels and so on, the environment then becomes better for employees and their families and the communities around them. So you all are advocates. So I've learned to walk the walk, and I remain inspired by you as we continue to use business as a tool for change. Thank you.